Now we're going to continue on this conversation about the Secret Service and their response over the second Trump assassination attempt. We know in the moment they shot at this suspected assassin, and he fled immediately. And they were caught him, miles up the road. They were able to finally apprehend him. Again, someone I believe he eventually almost pulled over, turned himself in some ways, what it sounds like. But it does bring up a lot of red flags to wonder what's happening here.
That's right. And as we mentioned also, this is someone who has a criminal history, as one of the charges was charged with possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. About 20 years ago, he was arrested after he was stopped in a traffic stop and then fled from officers and then barricaded himself in a business for 3 hours with a fully automatic machine gun. And that machine gun was listed in those charges against him as assault, possession of a weapon of mass destruction. Now, we're unsure if he served jail time or any of that, but he was convicted on those charges, so he is a convicted felon. And once again, he had a weapon, an AK-47 style rifle, and is now charged with possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, as well as possession of a firearm with an obliterated serial number. They've said that they have now sent that rifle to Quantico to try and decipher the portions of the serial number that have been scratched off to try to see if they can trace it and understand the history behind this firearm and where he obtained it. But as of right now, there's a lot of questions that are floating out there about how he was able to get so close to the former president, how he was able to mainly travel back and forth to Ukraine and be involved in this operation to try and fight on behalf of Ukraine. He had said that he was willing to die for the cause of Ukraine. And we see as well what he wasn't charged with. And our attorneys have been getting us information on this. There is a 18 U.S. Code 351, which is titled Congressional Cabinet and Supreme Court Assassination, Kidnapping, and Assault Penalties. And it specifically lists a major presidential or vice presidential candidate as a member of this category. And then if you go down to subsection C, it's whoever attempts to kill or kidnap any individual designated in subsection A of this section shall be punished by imprisonment for any term of years or life. He was not charged with this by the Department of Justice. Now, I've been talking with Jordan. He is in D.C., and he'll be in the studio in the back half of this show. He is headed straight to the studio from the airport. He's up there for some meetings. And he was saying, wow, hopefully this type of charge is coming, that a lot of times they charge early with what is very obvious, easy, so that they can keep that person in custody while they do an investigation, and then they can amend those charges later with the more serious ones, because this is a potential life sentence as opposed to the 15 to 20 years he's facing with the 2 gun charges. But if they have him in custody, they can charge him, they can hold him, continue this investigation, and hopefully more of these are coming.
Sure. I wanted to play this bite just from the debate just the other night. Again, when I was texting with our group as we were watching the debate, I thought in that moment, of all the talk of toning down the rhetoric, of calming down, of trying to make us less divisive and to become more, unified and just be able to argue well and disagree well. When this statement came out after we had just been only a couple, 8 weeks or so from the first Trump assassination attempt, which obviously left one person dead at one of his rallies, this is what Vice President Harris had to say, and it sent off some red flags for me.
This comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch.
What I was really just trying to focus on was that soundbite of saying, hey, I encourage you all to go out to rallies. You know what that does? That, to me, that signals a lot of people who maybe not be of clear mind to go and take action like this. And sure, this one was not at a rally, but the last one was. And you can't tell me that they don't write these statements for people, that these are not off the cuff, and you don't think for a moment this could engage in bad behavior.
That's right. And you mentioned earlier that for a time we did see a very short, brief time, a cooling of the rhetoric where there weren't as many people calling him directly Hitler, but they were, Hitler adjacent for their rhetoric for a time. But then they immediately ramped up that he's a threat to our democracy, a danger to our democracy. He must be stopped. It was the exact same rhetoric that we criticized them using before the first assassination attempt, and they went right back to it. And they keep telling, in this case, deranged people that he is a threat to them, a threat to democracy, and he must be stopped. Not he must lose. He must be stopped. That tells people that are already inclined to this sort of deranged behavior, it's granting permission to some degree. Of when you hear that rhetoric, it can set in motion things like what we saw over this weekend and just 8 weeks prior, where someone decides, I'm going to take this in my own hands and I'm going to be the hero. That isn't the answer.
And when you comb through his social media posts, he says things like your campaign should, he was talking to Biden and to Harris, the campaign should be called something like KADAF, Keep America Democratic and Free. And democracy is on the ballot. We can't afford to fail. The world is counting on us to show the way. These are the type of situations when you have people who are willing to take what you're saying, though it may be, verbose. It may be this, you're talking, puffing everyone up. But there are people who will take these moments literally. Like Will said, when you say democracy is on the ticket, and that this could be the end of our democracy as a whole. If he becomes president, that becomes a big issue. Now, look, I would say the same on both sides here. I don't think that, obviously we're seeing it more on one side right now, but I would love to see a place again where you could have these debates, where conversations can happen, where people can argue well and have these discussions. Sadly, we're not there right now. Some of it is the birth of social media. I really think that it started this split where you can't have those conversations because it's very easy to hide behind a keyboard. It's very easy to spew hate on either side, because you don't feel like these people are real. They become faceless individuals. I felt that before. My family has felt that before. That's what happens time and time again. So I encourage you to take a breath before you obviously post, before you say something insensitive. Look, we had, who was it? Vindman's wife, who said something
Lieutenant
like,
Colonel
no
Vindman.
Ears were harmed during this assassination attempt. Ha, ha, ha.
Go about your Sunday.
Yeah, and then had to apologize. Why? Because if you took 3 seconds before you click post, you would realize, 1, why do I need to weigh on this? And 2, you're saying something that is offensive and mean and, again, it is just part of the problem.